We need to learn to see trials and tribulations as opportunities. I know that that's easier said than done, but if you don't learn to see trials and tribulations, problems and difficulties as opportunities, you will never align to God's will and His purpose for the trials and tribulations in your life. Why? Because God says, and I'm going to prove it to you in a second, that the trials and tribulations are basically an opportunity. And we need to learn to embrace them. James chapter 1, verse 2 to 8. He says in his scriptures, he says, consider it pure joy. What does he say? Pure joy. Like the last thing I'm thinking when I'm having an issue is joy. The last thing I'm thinking when I've got problems is let me just be joyful. But how many of you guys understand that God's way is better than our way? If we would just learn to flip the perspective when trials and tribulations come, because they're coming. Look to the person next to you and say, they're coming. And they'll be like, dun, dun, no. All right. James chapter 1, verse 2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Thank you, Lord, but that doesn't help. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. So, guys, it's not just one kind. There's going to be many kinds. Let's open up our eyes. Verse 3. Because, why? What I love about God is He says, hey, do this. My way is better. And let me tell you why it's better. Side note, if you're raising your kids, don't just tell them, hey, just do it this way. No, tell them why they should do it this way. Are you understanding? If we're instructing somebody, just don't tell them, hey, just do it this way. No, instruct them why. Okay? Here's what He says, because you know, if you know, which this is why we're learning, so that we know. Because if you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, then let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete. Turn to the person next to you and say, grow up. Now turn to the other person behind you or in front of you that you don't feel so uncomfortable telling them to grow up, and tell them to grow up. Because some of y'all looked at your spouse and be like, grow up. The pastor told me to say it. Grow up. Guys, trials and tribulations are an opportunity for us to grow up, for us to be mature, and for us to be complete. Because the promise is that we would not be lacking in anything at the end of verse 4. And if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and will be given to you. Guys, remember, He's providing in the middle of the trials and tribulations. Verse 6. But when you ask, you must believe, and I'm going to come back to this. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. Not just some things, all things. Believers, verse 9, believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position. Jump down to verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love Him. Guys, He says consider it all joy, because it's an opportunity for you to grow up. And some of us, if we're honest, we need to grow up. The same problems 20 years ago can't be the same problems facing you today. And many times, because we've not embraced the unexpected, we're still facing yesterday's problems. If we're going to build upon proper foundation, you can't just keep building off of a broken platform. We've got to learn to embrace this opportunity as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to get peace, to strengthen. Remember last week, the message was about vulnerability. Unless you would expose the issues, You cannot build upon them unless you expose the issues. And by exposing them, you realize that this is an opportunity to strengthen up the foundation. Unless you see what's behind the walls, you don't know what's leaking. You don't know what to fix. And anytime something is leaking in our lives, it's an opportunity to make it better. In our house, you know, when we, for those of you guys who heard last week's message, we removed the cabinets, but we didn't want to. We wanted to just resurface them. But the cabinets were falling apart, so we had no choice. So we had to take the cabinets down. And when we took the cabinets down, you guys already know, the walls were like smushy. Is that a word, right? Smushy. Like you could put your finger through them. Why? Because they were moist. So we couldn't just put the cabinets back up. I'm just like, kid, just do it. Don't worry about it. He's like, bro, the cabinets will fall down. And I'm like, yeah, that would be a problem. So we had to take down the walls and figure out what's going on. And when we go behind the walls, we're like, why are these moist? Is it just Florida? No. It's because there were hairpin needle leaks in the plumbing. Like you couldn't even see it. It was like one drop every 5 hours. You understand? But if we didn't get past it, if we didn't get to where we had to go, we would never have seen what was going on. We would never have been able to fix them. But all the way, you know, it's like, hey, we don't need to put new cabinets in. And then the guy says he pulls up a piece of the wall and he sees the plumbing. And I see the plumbing. And I'm like, all right, just take out that. Let's just repair that. He's, no. You got to replace the whole section. But I'm like, why? He's like, because you have to. I'll get into that in a couple weeks. But then he says, but then you got to take down all the drywall too. I'm like, why? Like, just cut out this section. We're okay. No, you got to do it all because you don't know if it's filtered. Now, you might be thinking my contractor was taking me for a run. Believe me, I thought the same thing. I thought he was working me. I thought it. They're like, you know, yeah, he was probably working you, bro. No, I thought he was working me, but then I realized, wait, he's a really close friend of mine. He wouldn't do that to me. And then he showed me why I had to do it. The problem is, all along I'm thinking, wait, we weren't even going to repair the cabinets. Now we got to repair the walls. Now we got to repair the plumbing. How many of you guys understand that was unexpected? In my life, this was a trial. This was a tribulation because it wasn't in the budget. I didn't factor it into the timing. I wasn't expecting to do this. In our lives, there are things that are not in the budget. Like they're not in your emotional budget. They're not in your financial budget. They're not in your spiritual budget. And when they show up, all of a sudden, you broke financially, you're broke emotionally, you're broke spiritually because you didn't expect the news you just got today. How many of you guys understand what I'm saying? It's not even about the news. Somebody was telling it to you, but what about if you wake up and all of a sudden you don't feel the same way and you realize that something is wrong, something is leaking, you don't quite know what it is, but you know that you just don't have the emotional or spiritual currency to deal with it today. Have you ever been there? Like you woke up and you just know, like, have you guys seen those memes lately? I don't want to go to work. You guys seen it? I don't want to go to work. No? Y'all need to check your social media a little bit more because you're outing me. You've seen it. I don't want to go to work. No? No? You know it? It's like with a merengue song too, right? No? All right. I don't know what I'm talking about. But have you ever woken up and been like, yeah, like I don't want to be a husband today. Like I don't want to be a wife today. Who are these little people in my house? I don't know you. I don't want to be daddy today. Yes or no? Especially when they're fighting. Sometimes they're fighting. I have the tendency just like, go ahead, go. Knock each other out. You know what I'm saying? Like, just get at it. Like, I want to buy boxing gloves. Be like, let's do this. You know, George, spray paint the floor. Be like, yeah. Yes or no? If y'all knock each other out, I'm good for at least an hour. Yes or no? I digress. But thank you for listening. It wasn't in the budget financially, emotionally, spiritually. So what? I mean, you guys understand, like when you start building, you can't stop. The project has to continue. Guys, the cabinets were already down. You already put a ring on it. You can't stop building. You already created the little people. You can't give up. You already started the business. You can't throw in the towel. The project has to continue. It can't stop. Like when you face trials and tribulations, what do? Here's what you do. You ready? It's real mind-blowing. You keep going.